contributions from the community.
You know, and I've met some of these community members that are making contributions, like Ben Adams on Kestrel making perf improvements. There's tons of people doing these sort of awesome things. It's cool that it's just sort of the brain trust has expanded to Google and now.
Yeah, the Ben Adams thing is great. I mean, if you look today, we announced the TechEmpower finally released round 13. That's the first round of the TechEmpower Web Benchmark that actually has .NET Core in the benchmark. And we showed up as number 10 in plain text. And Ben Adams is probably responsible for at least half of that.
And that guy's so unassuming. He's such a cool guy. I love that guy. I didn't realize that you could target ASP.NET Core MVC applications to the full framework until I sat down with someone and they're like, yeah, I do that at work all the time now.
Yeah, you can build an ASP.NET Core application on full desktop framework. And for the most part, you get all those same perf benefits that we've been touting. You know, we just announced the TechEmpower numbers today. And,
sure.
And those numbers actually will work on the full framework just like they will in the .NET Core framework.
All right. Well, we also had a TechEmpower survey come out, and they seem to like our performance compared to everybody else. It's awesome. There's actually an aka.ms link. You folks can go to aka.ms/TechEmpower. There's a really good kind of performance summary overview, and Scotty even mentioned in his video. So we've got a great panel today. Let's kick it off.
Yeah.
Right, let's break it to them.
I'm Karen E, and I'm the Chief of Staff for the Developer Tools and Services Division, and I'm here with some great guys. You guys want to give an intro to yourself?
Sure. My name is Emil Danforth. I'm a PM on the .NET team.
What do you do?
What I do? Well, I work on the .NET team, so everything open source related, the BCL, you know, I'm all over the place. Like .NET Standard is probably the most commonly known one at this point.
Okay, awesome. David?
David Felder. I'm an architect on the ASP.NET Core team. I work on pretty much everything on ASP.NET, design, go to meetings, and write code too.
So like those TechEmpower results.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
we're going to get back to that.
It's not all me, but yeah.
Rowan?
I'm Rowan Miller. I work as a program manager on the Entity Framework team here. So I just make sure the trains run on time for EF and do technical design and occasionally get to touch code when I have a spare minute.
Awesome. Matt?
And I'm Matt Storgerson, and I'm a PM on the team that makes C#, Visual Basic, and F#. And in particular, I dabble in language design, designing C#, and always making sure that there are new features around the corner.
Awesome. So we heard a little bit from Dimitri and Kendra, like what their favorite announcements were, but what about you guys? What did you guys get really excited about yesterday?
TechEmpower, definitely. That's mine. A big one.
That was big. I want to just say a different one. Visual Studio for Mac, incredible. I think that's, yeah, awesome.
David, those TechEmpower results, those were impressive. I was reading that article and it's pretty impressive.
It was great. Yeah, I think we spent the last 3 years doing ASP.NET Core, you know, even before it's cross-platform. And one day, Damien Edwards was at his table sitting down, and he went like this and said, "Why do we suck?" And I think I was there, and I kind of said, "Because we don't care." And
you guys weren't even on the map, right?
Yeah, it was because we didn't care. It was because people would always say, you know, going that fast is impossible. Like, who cares? It's not realistic. But the whole point is that it kind of gave us a reason to drive to that performance. So it was a culture change for our team. It was a big thing that we did, where we had everyone caring about allocations, caring about performance. We had a rig called the Smurf Lab that had a bunch of hardware set up to do perf testing. Awesome. So every day we'd have some new change. A dev would go on the Smurf Lab, would go check in his code, run some stuff, and then we'd go, oh, we got 10 more requests per second. And then we'd have like a count that was like, today we got 5%, tomorrow we got 10%. And then we had this graph of us going from a couple hundred RPS to 1.1 million.
Awesome.
And then we had Ben Adams, who is a guy from the community who appeared out of nowhere, pretty much. And he started using ASP.NET Core, and he loves performance, so he just began to send tons of PRs to Kestrel, our web server, and we ended up having really good performance out of that whole thing. Yeah.
So you mentioned someone from the community. So ASP.NET Core is all open source?
All open source. The entire thing's open source.
How does it feel on the team when you're kind of working open source? So
it is both amazing and awesome at the same time. So you get the constant feedback that you kind of want and don't want sometimes.
Yeah.
At the same time, we get great contributions from people that are just interested in coding, so we get great feedback from people.
Got it. We'll talk a little bit more. Let's go back to TechEmpower a little bit. So,
yeah.
David, we're talking about those results. You know, team. I love hearing that the team kind of went to culture change, because I think making those kind of really dramatic performance improvements, it is a culture shift.
Yeah.
It's about what you value and how you kind of go for that.
Yeah, it was big because I think there's a joke in our team now. Whenever someone says don't, someone says allocate in the same room. Don't allocate as a joke, but it's it kind of shows the change in cultures in general. So devs are more aware of allocating memory as they use it, and people are aware in code reviews that things are going on. So it's kind of made the entire team aware of performance in .NET in general. And it's been good for the team in general, I think. And expand more than just our team. It was our team and .NET team, so we kind of worked together to make the entire stack faster.
Awesome. Tell me about one of the what you guys did with allocation. Yeah, algorithms or something. How did you?
One huge thing we did to make it a lot faster was whenever you're trying to figure out if HTTP works, right? You get bytes from the internet coming off the wire. You parse bytes and you turn them into strings for headers, right? So headers, there's like content length. There's a bunch of known headers. Instead of having a dictionary from string to string, which are the names of headers, you can have a class that kind of backs the dictionary that has a bunch of fields for known headers. So instead of having a dictionary entry and a hash lookup for every single key, for the known ones, we kind of hard code, here are the 25 known things that Chrome sends, and we can bake those into the system and not have them be a lookup for a dictionary lookup. So you kind of you avoid the whole lookup and hashing, you just have a single field for every header that's known. And that was a huge perf win. We also don't allocate to compare strings. So imagine you have a bunch of bytes on the wire that map to content length. We can actually do a comparison by generating code that kind of does the string comparison ahead of time. So we can say, given these bytes, is that content length? If it is, then don't allocate a string, but compare it in place, and then have the string content length be a constant that's used for all requests. So we cache like strings, we cache bytes, we cache known things, we pool memory, we pool bytes for the server. So as you have one connection that has multiple requests, we can reuse buffers that were processed and handled already. So yeah.
That's really cool.
The other thing I want to point out is because we always talk about the community, but the one thing that open source has done, I mean, ASP.NET is open source for much longer than the rest of the stack was, but that basically the entire stack is open source, right, from the runtime to the framework to ASP.NET. People like Ben Adams, they basically just look at what they do and they look at, okay, where do I losing performance? And so, for example, Ben Adams recently submitted a PR that changes our threading primitives because the locking took too long, and so they found a way to make that smarter and faster. So the nice thing is, not only do we have a community outside, it also the community helps us to tie the teams on the other end more together by basically forcing PRs that span multiple layers and basically do these cross-cutting optimizations that no matter what organization setup you have, you always have some organizational thinking where you only look at your own layers to a certain extent, and that helps glue the whole thing together and say, no, I want to really have a great performance from the request all the way down to networking stack to the runtime, the GC, and many other things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't really think of open source that way, but I mean, really, they don't know, nobody knows our organization structure.
Right.
You're really thinking about the whole project at once. What's the culture like on the teams now that you have to think about every platform?
I would say in general, our teams, I feel like we're a lot more flexible. We interact a lot more too. It was interesting when you guys were talking about how with performance, it's easier for the external community to come and interact with us and look at our whole stack. That's actually easier across teams as well now too. So we're looking at debugging an ASP.NET Core problem where it's not performing like we want on Linux, and the bottleneck ends up being an EF. It's much easier for an EF dev to walk across and understand the ASP.NET code base and look at the checked-in benchmarks and run them on their machine. It's just a lot easier and more agile to work.
I mean, we talked a little bit about Kestrel Web Server, TechEmpower, performance, GC performance. How has performance really kind of impacted team culture, and how, when we think ahead for what's coming next, how do we think about that?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, I'm on the team that does the API design, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at what are the major pivots of API design for .NET, it has always been usability. Right? We care about the fact that you can write code, the code looks intuitive and is correct, but we didn't really care about performance. I mean, very simple example, when you call console write line and you pass in variable number of arguments, we create an array for you that just represents those values, and then they get boxed because they're object. And if you don't call the methods, we just happily create an empty array for you. And we've done some performance optimizations in the past, but really, to me, the cultural shift is to think about performance as a major part of your code, where code that you write that's intuitive is not only correct, it's also efficient, and you don't waste cycles, right? Because if you think about the cloud, you have to be mindful of people's money, because the more inefficient you are, the more runtime overhead you produce. So that's, I think, the major shift on our side.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for EF2, both in API design, just thinking about, okay, so if we do this, what coding patterns are people going to use? How much stuff are we going to be throwing away? The other thing I would add too, historically, at least for EF, and I think for most other teams as well, the performance benchmarking and things like that were done by members that weren't actually working on the product code, and that stuff was very kind of tucked away, kind of a black box to developers. On EF now, we actually have a benchmarks repo that is just one of our source code repos, and developers can easily check in tests that are the same as the unit tests they would write when they're testing product code. We just run them a bunch of times and see how long they take to run, and that shows up, and we have benchmarks that we keep to compare. So we, as a baseline for EF Core, we tend to use EF6. So we say one of our goals with EF Core was to be faster and to use less memory than EF6. So to validate that, we write tests and check them in when we add features. We make sure that we are actually faster, and if we're not, we spend time fixing it. So I think that's one of the big cultures is performance isn't an external thing that gets done, it's just part of our development process.
Yeah, that's huge. So for ASP.NET, we actually have a meeting every Friday where we get the EF team, we get our entire team together for performance, and we discuss performance metrics, we discuss benchmarks, we discuss things in blogs that we've seen people compare us to Go or Node, and we talk about those things, and we kind of have a strategy for going forward. So Kestrel was the beginning, and now it turns out, people do more than just like write hello world. So we have to make like auth faster and EF faster. Like the pooling came from a test in TechEmpower called Fortunes, which does an EF query and then does a database, a string format style thing. And it turns out we're really bad at like that combination and stuff. And it's not that you can't be fast, it's that when you do it in the .NET way, it just isn't fast by default. So we kind of have to fix like string building now, so we have the PRs for .NET Core, and we have to fix EF to do pooling. So those things kind of come out of the entire performance culture. So we're doing it across the stack now.
And that's actually an interesting point too. We're not just optimizing code paths, we're actually at some points introducing new features to allow you to scale, for example, a website. So pooling is something that probably wouldn't be on by default because there's some caveats to using it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a feature that you can opt into if scale is super important to you.
Actually, scale and Kestrel make me think of the Age of Ascent game. Totally written on. Yeah.
I think Ben had a video of a GC pause like in space. Like all the ships disappeared, and it was like an actual GC pause like visual, and it was like wow, it's super cool.
It was pretty amazing. I kind of remember it's like that massive real-time game. And so that's all based on Kestrel?
Yeah, no. So before he wrote his own web server and he was doing his own thing, and he came here and we spoke. We had lunch. And I said, dude, just use Kestrel. And he was like, all right. And then he just like threw stuff away, started helping with Kestrel, and then he uses it now in his.
That's amazing.
His game.
That's awesome. Okay, we'll take one from Cecil. Can you guys talk about the new system.io.pipelines features?
Yeah. So as part of the whole perf work in ASP.NET Core, Kestrel, figuring out how to make things fast, there's an effort to move that kind of knowledge into the BCL itself. So to have everyone have the same benefits that we learned doing ASP.NET Core. So we want to make new primitives for people that are doing server stuff or networking stuff to have these things on by default. So this is an effort to bring what we learned in ASP.NET Core and Kestrel and TechEmpower to the masses. So new programming model, by default, it would be fast and it does all the things, the tricks out of the box, so you don't have to like do things that we did in Kestrel. So it's on .NET Core FX Lab, which is our kind of our labs area for doing .NET stuff. And emails to PM, so you can ask some questions.
Okay. Is that on the same site as the rest of the .NET Core?
Yeah, so we have CoreFX, which is the mainline
yeah.
repository for the .NET Framework, or the .NET Core part, and then CoreFX Lab is essentially our playground where we play with new things. I mean, to me, the coolest thing with pipelines is that if you look at the TechEmpower benchmark, like I think Hanselman said, but it's the strongest increase TechEmpower has seen with a web framework in terms of performance.
Yeah, I think it was like 894,000 times better.
But I don't think we have maxed out. I mean, we we fixed a bunch of the. I mean, low-hanging fruit maybe a bit an overstatement, but we did a bunch of fixes. But we still have massive room to move forward, and pipeline is one of those areas where I think it can make a huge difference. So I don't think we are at the top of our performance abilities yet.
We're gonna win. You heard it here.
Challenge.
Well, it's great when we have competitive people. Well, you're number one. You weren't number one yet, right?
Number 10 is so far from number 1. That's good.